Right now, you might be using AI coding tools like a chat box. You ask for code, copy it, paste it, fix errors, and ask again. By the end of this masterclass, I want you to use Claude Code like a real coding partner inside your project. Not just to generate snippets, but to understand your repo, plan changes, edit files, run commands, test, debug, and help you ship. But to do that well, you need the right mental model. If you just say, build this app, approve everything, and hope it works, it might be fine for a small demo. But in a real project, that breaks quickly. So we will start with the foundation, what Claude is, what Claude Code adds on top, and how to control it properly before you trust with the bigger work. So let's get started. In this masterclass, we'll be covering these chapters in depth, and feel free to skip to any of the chapters that you think you want to focus more, but we'll be going through all of them. So let's get started. So the first, introduction about the Claude, right? So you know that, Anthropic is the company and Claude is the product of Anthropic. And Claude has three specific products, which I would say, which is Claude Chat, Claude Cowork, and Claude Code. Claude Code is the one that we're going to go in depth, but I also give you a good quick context about Claude Chat and also Claude Cowork. So let's go and let's open this, Claude.ai. Once you open the Claude.ai, you can straight away, you come to Claude Chat. And so Claude Chat is similar to what you will typically do it in ChatGPT or any chat interface AI agents, right? You go and ask questions, it's going to do the research and then come back to you, and then you understand what's going on. So not much context, everyone knows it, everyone is using it in daily life, right? So that's on the chat. And also, of course, it's been evolved over the years with the memory, and it has full context about you, so which is good, right? So that when you're asking questions, you understand who you are and what you do, so it's going to give answers based on that. So second is the Cowork, which is what you can see this, right? So the Claude Cowork. So Claude Cowork is being there recently, and much recent compared to Claude, or Claude Chat or Claude Code. And Claude Cowork, right? So Claude Cowork, the fun fact is, Claude Cowork was built using Claude Code. So the team at Anthropic, they used Claude Code to build Claude Cowork. Because when they first released Claude Code, which is powerful coding agent, and they find that, it's not user friendly, because of course it's first time. It was designed mainly for the developers, but then they figured out, okay, there are a lot of people, they want simple automation stuff. Then they use Claude Code to build a Claude Cowork. So Claude Cowork is mainly for simple automation stuff that you want to do regularly every day, and some scheduling, some tasks, so that you can do with Claude Cowork. The true hero or the true prominent product from Claude is the Claude Code, which is the powerful coding agent, and it can do many things. It can build products, and it can go and work with your local files. It's just powerful, right? It's just powerful because it can connect multiple tools and do the work that you want, that you're asking it to do. Yeah, so that's on the Claude Code, and you can see that you can choose the models, and you can do a lot of things, and whatever I opened is in the browser, Claude.ai/code. But coming back, you can see that Claude Code is the coding agent, Claude coding agent. But it's a combination of models, which is Claude models plus the harness. Harness is the part that I want to go in depth and explain to you how this works, because harness is going to play a major role in every company, right? So what is this harness? But before I give you a context about harness, I want to tell you a history of how this comes. So let's go back. Let's go back here, right? So right now we are in harness engineering era, right? But it started from the prompt engineering, from prompt engineering to context engineering, and then the harness engineering. So the prompt engineering, right? So prompt engineering, it started in 2022 and 23, which is when the ChatGPT came and then became popular. So even everyone, right? So everyone wanted to, hey, how do I become a prompt engineer? People are getting like hundreds of thousands, dollars to be a prompt engineer, and the most important skill, is English, because that's a language. If you know how to prompt the model, so then you are the best. So that was the era, for 1-2 years, and it's about how do I ask, hey, act as a SEO agent, act as a YouTube script writer. We just put, we want to give the better prompts, right? So that was the focus for a long time. But then it shifted to context engineering. Context engineering is about, it started in those 24 to 25. But this is about, right? So okay, people are tired about, hey, asking question, but I have to give the context every time, right? I have to give like super big context. It doesn't know what I am, who I am. So it's the answers are like super blunt. So that's why the context engineering came, which is more about giving more information, understanding about who you are as a company, or who you are as a product, and your brand guidelines, and everything about what I do. So those kind of information made the model more smart, and also it was giving more context information, right? So to understand the context, and it gives us better output. So that was the era, like 1-2 years, which is focused more on the context engineering. But starting this year from 2026, this is where the harness engineering came. The model became powerful, and also the agents, we want to do many work. We want the model to do certain things. Okay, I don't want just the output. I want I want it to do certain actions, and I want to understand, but also I direct to do certain things, but also I don't want to do certain things by the model. So I need control. So that's where the harness came. That's where every company is working on towards harness engineering, about the control that you can have on the model, and to make the whole agent more powerful. So every company is working, not many companies are working on the model. So they are working on the harness, which is like making the model more powerful. But to give you a good analogy, so let's go back to here. Yeah. So this is what I want to tell you about. So agent is not just agent. Agent is a mix of model plus harness. So model, everyone knows. Okay, there are like different models like Cloud Opus, Fable, and there is Kimi, and then Google Gemini, and then there is so many models. We know what is models, like, which is LLMs, large language models. But the harness is the part that is super interesting, and then that's where all the teams, all the AI engineers are working towards. So what is this harness, right? But if you see in the left, the one that I'm showing off in the left, in the purple color, you can see that that's what I would say, like, consider that as an engine of the car engine. It's not, but consider that. So consider that as an engine, car engine. So the car engine it's typically what I would say as Claude model, which is like Sonnet or Fable or Opus or any model. But then you have the center part, which is the plus, and the center part, which is, I would say, like the harness. To my car analogy, what I would say as a harness is the part is the car without the engine. So the other parts, like the steering or the brakes or the dashboard or the sensors or the seat belts or even the tires, everything what I would say as a harness. That is without the engine, the other parts of the car. That's what I would say as a harness, because without that you can't do anything just with the model, right? So you can ask question, it can come back to you, but it's not going to run. It's not going to do certain things. So that's where the harness plays a super important role. And you can see that, coding agent, it's a mix of, or the agents that I would say in the right side, it's a mix of a car. When do we get a proper car? It needs to have an engine, which is the model. And it also needs to have other parts like brakes and everything, which is what I would say as a harness. So combining together is what making the car, I would say, the agent more powerful. So that's what I would say, like model plus harness, which is equal to agent. And here the coding, Claude, what Claude makes powerful, Claude Code makes powerful, it's because of the Claude Code's harness and the Claude Code model, which is combining together, it performs hard task, amazing task, right? So that's what it makes powerful. Just want to give that context. But what is that harness include, right? Of course, it includes all the tools it has access to, context and permissions that you're giving that permissions, and memory. And also it's about verification, logs, recovery, and then human approval. Where should I approve? And those are all customizable, right? How you customize yourself, making your harness much better. And also it's not just because of the Claude Code, also we can customize it ourselves. How I can customize it based on my needs, right? So that's what making this whole agent equal to model plus harness. So let's go back to specifically on the Claude model, and I think you got a good understanding on the introduction about what are the different models that are available. Yeah, I think you got a good understanding of the models available and the intro of Anthropic and the Claude. Let's move to that Claude Code's mental model, right? So if I go to the Claude Code's mental model, and you can see that I want to help you understand the basics, which is Claude Code equal to, which is LLM, which is model, plus the other things, which is project context, tools, permissions, memory, and workflow. That's what I would say. We would say as harness, which is like Claude Code equal to model plus harness. But we understood what is agent equal to model plus harness. But I want to take you to the Claude Code mental model, how this works, and what are the things that makes it more powerful. Let's say this is what I want to discuss, right? So there is this U, which is in the left. You can see that it's U, which is I'm going to give some context to Claude Code. Hey, do this. I'm thinking about, I want your understanding on this, or like some information that you're going to give, and then it's going to go to the Claude Code. And once it goes to the Claude Code, what it does, it's going to read your repo or read your folder and the project and everything. And once it reads that, and then it goes to the plan. It's going to do a plan. Hey, this is what I should do. Like, I have a step-by-step plan, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and this is what I'm going to do. And then it goes and edit the files, the coding files, and all the files or anything that it should do, and edit. And then it's going to run, and it's going to test it, and then verify if everything is good. If not, it goes back again, and then it's going to plan and then do the things. Right, so that's what it's more, I would say, like a loop. Claude Code, agents are more powerful because it has its capability to get a task and then consider what should be done and what it thinks is verified or fully done. So it does the work, checks, not done, go back, test it, and come back and do the work and check. So once it done, once it done with that, the whole thing, then it just reports back that, hey, this is good, and what's the next step, what you should do next. So that's what the whole, make the coding agent, or specifically the Claude Code, powerful. But how it does, this is what it makes it, the super interesting part, which is, I would say, like the Claude Code has many capabilities. What I would say as, the harness, Claude Code will have, the context, project context about the files, repo, doc, logs, and then we have the hooks, which is we'll discuss, and where is CLAUDE.md, and we have memory, and then also we have MCPs and permissions, and also we have subagents and skills. So all those are the ones that make Claude Code more powerful. So the good part is, you can be able to customize it based on your use case, and you can understand what it does and how it is doing it, and hey, I want to change this based on my context. So that's what we are going to discuss in depth in the next, I would say, like, in the full masterclass with examples, right? So you got, the model, right? The mental model about how the Claude Code works and what are the things that is supporting the Claude Code, right? Okay, let's go back to the whimsical, and let's go to see the different, how to use Claude Code. I'm going to go there. Yeah, so there are different ways to use Claude, I would say, like, Claude Code. So the first one, I think you can quickly understand that, hey, I just opened claude.ai/code, and you come to here, and then, you have the coding, you go to the coding file, and then, this is one way to use it from the browser. But the drawback is, if you're going to use from the browser, you can work with all the files from the cloud, but not able to do that from the local files, which is, if you want to, work from your, desktop files, you should not be able to do it. That's the problem, right? So that's why the second method is you have to download the Claude desktop application in your desktop. To do that, you can Claude desktop app, search for it, and then you go and download it, download for Mac OS or download for Windows, or Windows if you are using the Windows ARM64 processor. So I have my Mac and I downloaded it, and I have my application. So let me open the application. So once I open the application, this is my application, which is what I would say, like Claude Code desktop application, where you can use the Claude Code, which is more powerful because you can do I would say, like, many things, like working with terminal, and also you can work with local files, which is what it's making it more powerful, right? So I'm going to spend most of the time in this masterclass doing everything from Claude Code in the desktop app, so you get the context, and you can see that I should be able to work from the local files, from my desktop. I should be able to do it, or if I want to change the folder or the file, I can be able to do it. And there is, like, that's one of the ways, the reason why we are using Claude desktop. And the third way that I would say is doing it from the terminal. Let's say I want to do this from the terminal. I'm going to open the terminal. So just type terminal if you're in the Mac, or you can use PowerShell or command prompt from your Windows, and I can just type it. So and how do I install? The third option would be, like, you need to install your Claude in your terminal. So if you're going to use it from the terminal, that's the third way of bringing the Claude Code to your desktop. So you can always go to the Claude Claude.com setup docs, and then once you scroll down, you have Mac or Windows PowerShell or Windows command. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to copy this, and I can put it in your terminal. In your terminal, I'm going to open this and I can put it in the terminal. But since I already have this, so I'm not going to download because I already installed it. So you can just put it there, it will be installed, so it will be much faster. And then now I want to show you how open a new session, right? So I'm just going to type Claude. If Claude is already installed, it's going to work, and I'm going to click Claude, and you can see that it just came, and then Claude is installed, and right. So and I can see that, but whenever I have given my subscription to this as well. But first time when we are doing it, it will ask you to connect to your Claude Code subscription, or like via API or other ways. So let me show you how this works as well. I'm going to log out. Now I logged out. I'm going to give Claude again. I'm going to create a new session. So now it will ask me what mode that I want to give. I'm going to go for the light mode, which I like. It's good. And then it will ask me select the login method, which login method that I can use to make the Claude Code work in my terminal. So you can see that there is different option, Claude Code subscription. So we need a subscription to make the Claude Code work. So you need to have a Pro or Max or Team or Enterprise. Pro starts with $20. I would highly recommend to get that and explore more, because it's the powerful thing that is available right now to do a lot of things. So Pro and then Max or Team, I have my Max plan, and or otherwise it would be like go with your API keys. You can bring it and then connect your console account. The third party platforms, like the third option would be third party platforms, which is Amazon Bedrock or Microsoft Foundry or Vertex AI, which we are not going to use it. So we'll go with the Pro, and then when I click it, it will open a tab in the browser to ask me to give the permission. So it has given the permission, and I'm going to close this, and I'm going to come back to the terminal, and now it's logged, right? So I'm going to click and enter. So it's okay. Security notes, Claude can make mistakes. Yes, for sure. I'm going to click yes, and yes, use recommended settings. Yeah. So right now Claude is initialized, and you can see that the Opus 5, which is the default model of Claude Code. So that is the third way of using Claude Code. The final fourth way is you can use it in any IDEs, which I say integrated development environments, the place where developers work. But now it's becoming in a common man. Anyone can just go and install Claude Code and do many things like developers what they do, right? So for that, what I would say is the fourth method. I use VS Code, or you can just go and download it. Or I use VS Code type of environment, which is Cursor. Also, they have the same type. Cursor, they have an IDE, and which is similar kind of Visual Code, Visual Studio, right? So this is the interface. Typically, once you come to the, once you download VS Code or, Cursor, you have an option to go to the IDE, and then, you can download, you can bring your repo file from your desktop. And once you open with certain file, which is I already have this particular repo. I would say like my folder, the coding folder, and I brought that. And but how do I initialize the Claude Code here? So you need to go to the extension, and there is an option. You need to type Claude and Claude Code for VS, and then you just install. So once you install, then you have to initialize like what I said, initialize it in terms of subscription, right? So that's what you have to do. So once you do that, Claude becomes available, and this is the interface that you will get. You can go back, and you can always type, hey Claude, what's up? So Claude, it's connected. So if it is connected, of course, it's going to reply back to me. If it's not, okay, so it says, there is some changes, but what are we going to build, right? You can do that. Or also you can use a terminal directly from here, there is a toggle panel. You can just click it, and the terminal will be open in the down. You can also connect Claude from here, right? So now the Claude is connected. So those are the different ways, right? One, either you want to do it from the browser, you can do it from the browser, or second one is from the desktop app, you can do it. But we are going to spend most of the time in the desktop app because it's powerful, and you can work with the local files and build many things. And third option is working from the terminal, or just / terminal and then put it work there. Or the final one is about using some IDEs where the UI is much better. You can do that as well. But I would say, like, anyone who is starting out, go with Claude desktop application, then move to the terminal setup. Then I would say, like, move to the the IDEs, integrated development environments. Okay, I believe you get a good context about where we are at right now, what we should do. And let me go back. So I'm going to different ways to use it, but the one thing is, it's all the same. It's nothing different, right? So whatever changes that you are doing here in this file particular from the desktop application, and I'm working with this content tool CF. Any changes that I'm making here will be reflected if I'm working in different environments. Let's say I'm working here, right? So I'm working here the same file, but the changes I'm going to make here will be reflected there. So it means it's the same setup, nothing is changing because all the sessions will be stored locally in your desktop. So you open any different application, they will bring the session out from your desktop, and they will understand what was the session that you worked, and then you can continue doing the work, right? So it doesn't matter where you are working on. So that's the good part about. So it's always the same setup. And one more thing that I want to talk to you about the channels, like you can Claude, they recently came, which is what I would say as dispatch. And dispatch is really good. The reason you can work from your mobile. If you connect the dispatch to your Claude mobile app, you can see, you opened your laptop and okay, I want to go to the a coffee. I want to take a coffee, or I want to take a I want to go out for some time. 10 minutes break, 15, half an hour. You can just type it and chat from the mobile. Just have to make the laptop open, but you control everything from your mobile, right? So that's a crazy part. That's a great part about this. It's just crazy, and you can do many things with that for sure. And it's right now it's in beta stage. So it's the same with you can control it from the Slack or from any Telegram or any other channel, and that's the flexibility we have in controlling the Claude Code in the desktop. So I hope you got a good understanding on the Claude Code mental model, which is about the basics and also the different ways of using and installing Claude in your desktop, different ways. So the next thing is, okay, let's strike through so you understand those are the things that we have done and we are progressing. So the next one, it's about the Claude, using Claude Code, because there is different ways to use Claude in different places, but almost the same command. It's not going to change much. So you can see that in the browser, in the browser, there is this, you can just click new, and then you can create a new session. That's it, right? So it's the same in desktop app as well. Create and click and create a new session. And if I go to any let's say terminal, right? So how do I create a new session? And it's simple. You just type a new terminal, and I'm going to click Claude. That's a new session. You just type Claude and then a new session will be created. But let's say I want to work from the previous session. So I'm just going to put like Claude-C, then it will bring the last session that I worked on. So this is the session that I worked on. I said, right, so this is what it is, right? You can see in the top. That was the last session that I opened in this particular project. Hey Claude, what's up? You can see that this is what it came. But let's say I don't know which session, but I don't want to bring the last session. I want to bring maybe 2-3 session before. So now I created a new terminal, and I'm going to ask Claude-R. So it's going to load all the sessions that I have created, and I can choose one, and then I can start working in that particular session. So the context will be stayed there, and I can just change the session. So that is a way to do it in terminal. But if you want to do it in the desktop app, it's the same. You just click a session, and then you go and work from there. So it's not a big deal. But there is an option to you just want to work with only the ones, right? The ones that is stayed here. So in your desktop. So you can just choose the session, and then you can work it from here. So that's a great part about it. And you want to talk to it, right? So how do you talk to? So you can, let's say I want to open this particular session, and I want to close this so that you get a good understanding on this. So Claude has the reason why Claude Code desktop app become more powerful is because the recent updates was super powerful in terms of be able to open the terminal from here, and I can open a new terminal and I can close this. So it's the same. You can get it from the IDs, which is VS Code or Cursor or anywhere. So you can do it directly from the Claude desktop app. Or you can also you can browser, you can have the browser, you can see the differences that the difference, which means the files that it made the changes. You can see that it made some changes, so I can click that as well. And at the same time, you can see whenever Claude Code, whenever it creates a session, it attaches a folder to it. So it needs to have a good context. So right now it's using the folder context tool CF. Okay. So, and I'm going to open the files. All the files under this folder will be visible. So I don't have to go to my anywhere else. So I'm going to just scroll it up in the left. So So you can see these are the files that is available in that particular folder. But to give a context about what is this folder is about, so this is a project done internally in our team. So we track all the new insights from X, from Reddit, from from YouTube and all the different places. That will be help us to create good content, right? So we want to understand the update, how we can bring create good videos and good product around this. So this is the project about. So that's why you see a big file. And now right now if I want to create a new session, I can just create a new session, Claude, and then I can refer. See, let's say these are the files, but I want to ask Claude, hey, check this file. I think there is an issue with that. So I can just put @ and I can choose the different files that is available, or I can do it directly from the UI, good UI chat as well. Let's say I want to put some file that is like MCP. Hey, I think there is a problem with the MCP file. I can just reference, right? So these are just commands, or a way to use your app in a much the terminal and the Claude Code in a much better way, so you get the context. So, and talking to it, and then we talked about the sessions, and there are other keys that I will discuss in the meantime when we go inside a deep, but this would for you to a good starting point, how to start a session in the terminal or from anywhere in the Claude web or Claude Code desktop. Yeah, so that's I guess you got a good understanding. But the next one, what is it about the workflow? When you should plan, and the things that is super important. Starting with the cloud workflow, how to work. Typically, the important thing is like, where do I start? How do we start? When I have a project that I want to start, how do we start? So the best part is you just close. Let's close it, and I'm going to just ask, or I'm going to just create a new session. I'm going to create a new session, and then and you can see that when I'm going to ask some question. Okay, the part is like I said, the first we need to plan it. So planning is the super important part. And the problem with that is, if you are going to do the plan, and the problem is you just plan it, but I don't want it. Just like I want someone who can go and brainstorm, right? So that's why they have an option called plan mode. You just put it in plan mode, and then it's not going to affect any of your files. It's just you talking to a person. You just brainstorm. There is no conflict or anything, right? And you always need to attach some kind of a folder. And I attached my repo, which is I just showed you, like, with so many files, right? Maybe I can just ask Claude, like, hey Claude, I don't have an idea, but you have access to this particular folder called content tools here. So go through it and let me know, bring me some ideas that I could work on. Then I want to brainstorm. So I just put it there, and I'm going to click it. So it's going to work. It's in the plan mode, so it's going to understand the project. So it knows that this is the project that it's going to do something, and it's thinking it's going to work, right? So that's the best way. Always start with the planning mode, so you know what you want to do, and but not clear, but talk to the agent and understand what we can do. So there is another concept which I want to tell you here is what I did is just the reverse prompting, and which is typically you go with the idea, right? Hey, I have this idea, go and build it. But the reverse prompting is more about, you ask Claude. Agents are super powerful. You don't have to give more context. Hey, you have all the information. Give me some good ideas. I want to think about, and then we can brainstorm, right? So and you can see that this is what the agents are doing. They're just going and understanding the whole the project, and it goes and map all the features and everything. That's what they are doing. That's what they are working on, and try to understand how the coding agents are working and what are all the things that they are doing. So of course you don't understand everything, but this would be a good way to see how agents are working, right? So that is I would say, like, the background task, which is what it's running. Agents, they just created some couple of other tasks. Hey, do this, and it's using some 16 tool users and 14 tool users. It's using so many tools to read everything. So that's what I would say, like, plan it first and run the agent, and then be careful about what the changes that you're going to do, and change the mode to the normal mode and manual, or the mode that we'll discuss about, and then go and start working on it, right? So that's the proper flow. Okay, so that is one, and let's finalize. And the next thing, okay, now we just opened the session. Okay, I can do it, but now I can plan it. So go to the plan mode, and then you talk, and then you brainstorm, you create some PRD or like a product requirement document, which is more like a scoping document before building any feature or building anything. But then the other part is about choosing the model. So the model or the critical part, I would say. Yeah, the model is the critical part, and the model configuration. And you can see that there are different models, which is like Fable 5, Opus 5, and Sonnet 5, and Sonnet 4.5. And so those models are the one default, the models that we have. But the default one, when you open a session, the default one would be like Opus 5, which is the most recent powerful model, which is SOTA level performance, state of the art performance, and it can do complex reasoning, everything. And but let me go back and tell you how this thing works. I'm going to right now I just want to show you how to change the models as well. So the Fable 5 is really powerful. Fable 5 is good, but okay, let me go back to the Whimsical. I want to show you something. So this is the graph from Anthropic. When they release the model, you can see the difference, which is the one in the almost the red color, which is the Opus. They are performing really good in the agentic coding by effort level. This is more on the coding performance, right? You can see there are different dots which indicates the low level effort, medium effort, high effort, X high, or like max effort, and it's performing really well compared to other models what they have, Fable 5 or Opus 4.8. So they are really powerful, and even they are really powerful even with the low effort that they can do, right? So yeah, so that's why we are going with Opus 5. But let me go back to the Claude desktop, and okay, so I think we ran certain things, right? So now it's asking me some questions, which is like, what kind of work do you want this session to be, and new features, or like some closing the gaps, right? So a couple of other things, but right now I don't want to ask anything, so I just want to close it. I just want to tell you the different models, like Fable 5, the powerful model. But me, what I do is I use Opus 5 for everything, almost everything. But I used to have plan mode, planning. Whenever I do planning, I go with Fable 5, and for the rest of the task I go with Opus 5, because Fable 5 is expensive. But it always in thinking mode, it do a better thinking and the planning, so I do that. And for the coding and all the different operations, I go with Opus 5. But then when do I use Sonnet 5? Typically when I have to do some automations, or like the one that doesn't require more intelligence, it just it's cheap, and I go with Sonnet 5. So there are other models as well that you can do. So in the UI you can usually change that, but let's say if you want to do it from the terminal, how do I do it? I just open the terminal. I'm going to ask Claude, I'm going to open a new session. Right now it just opened a new session. I'm going to type, see, by default it's going to be Opus 5, but I'm going to put model to choose the model if I want to change the model. So by default recommended, which is Opus 5, and I can use Fable as well, or like Sonnet, Haiku, any model, but I'm going with Opus 1 million context model. The other thing about this is as well, there is an option called /model and Opus plan. So this is a command that what it does, you can use one more mode, which is plan mode for one model, which is Opus, and then I can change to Sonnet model for other things like coding, editing, or doing anything. So in this way, I use Opus, which is top performance model, and Sonnet for planning, and then the Sonnet for other tasks. But me, I'm okay, because I don't want to go with that. Typically I can do when I have low tokens, or I don't want to pay much. If I'm using APIs that I can do, or some low level tasks that I want to go with Sonnet. But for this I want to change, I want to change back to everything to Opus. So I changed back to Opus. So that's what you can do with if you're doing it from the terminal. But let me go back. So this is how you can change between the models, and that is what about Opus plan, which is just model Opus plan. It's a hybrid way of working with two different models in one session, one for planning and one for doing editing things. So, and of course when we create subagents, we can also configure our models as well. But there is an option called another thing, which is /config. When you put /config, which is what I would say as configuration, you can do it, and you can check other things, all different things that you can do with /config. Let me scroll left so that you have more space to see it. Yeah, so you can have an option to check all the different the permissions that you are given, whether it's in thinking mode, yes, true, fast mode Opus 5, no, we didn't do it, but I can also check the usage as well. The other things, it's just about configuration, everything. The UI is okay, and I will explain to you about more about later. The stats as well. So config is good whenever you want to check everything about the model and everything. So in the config, you can, let's say you want to go and you can check the model, which is model Opus 1 million, right? So those are the things that you could do. Configure the model, and what model that you should choose, which is important. And yeah, that's the way. So you got the context. But now the most critical part is the next one, which is permissions. Okay, let's go there and understand more. So permissions are super critical. It's because permissions are the ones that is going to define the agent what it should do and what it should not, and where it should come and ask you permissions, right? So it's more like you have a super intelligent junior engineer, but you can't give everything to him, which is like coding agent, like Claude Code. You can't give everything at one go, full autonomy, right? So you have to treat Claude Code first time, you have to treat it like a smart junior engineer. So you give the context, it goes and do the things, and then but every time it comes back and asks you for permissions. So you get that those permissions will help you understand how it works. And then once you have a good confidence, trust on the Claude Code model, then you just let it go, right? Okay, go and do this, I'm okay with that, you know how to do it, you are super smart, right? So that's where it takes. So but I want to tell you about how this works. So how much freedom that you should give. So if I go back, you can see that the mode, those are the different modes that we're going to talk about, which is manual, accept edits, plan, auto, and bypass permission. So just put the plan in the top. So we have REST, it's manual, accept edits, auto, and bypass, right? Those are the different modes. So let me go back to the WebSQL. So the permissions, the first one, it's the plan, right? When you are in the plan mode, we just saw how it works. It's not going to do anything to your file, it's not going to edit, nothing. It's just going to focus, of course, on reading the file and then explore, and then it's going to give you more suggestions, how this works, and brainstorm and then do the planning and everything. So that's plan mode. The second one, which is the manual mode, and which is the default mode. And if you're going to start with the manual mode, and of course it's going to ask you more things, but you need to understand to which it's asking and why. And start with manual mode, and for everything edit, write, and most commands, it's going to ask you for the permission, whether I should do this or not. You're going to accept or deny. So that's manual mode. But then the accept edits, which is where it's going to auto accept file edits. Whenever it's going to edit some file, it's going to do automatically. But for the rest, for all the commands, rest of the commands, it's going to ask you for the permissions. I should do this or not. That is the second way, which is accept edits. Auto mode, which is like more autonomy, the top level. So it's still auto mode, and it's most of the permissions that it's not going to ask you. So it runs automatically, and Claude judges whether it's super critical or before making that decision. So that's why it's smart. And try go to the auto level. Whenever you want the agent to work at the highest level, you need to go to the auto, but of course I don't recommend you to go to the auto level at first itself. So start with manual, then go to accept edits, and then auto, right? So this is the best way. So the bypass is typically when you have to properly you are working in a sandbox environment where you have to give every permission for it to run it automatically, right? So that's where it's more powerful. But I haven't personally used a lot in terms of bypass permission, but mostly I go from manual, accept edits, and auto. So those are the different permission levels, that mode that you can change to work with. But start with manual, right? So those are the different modes that you could travel around, that you could do. And but the one that I want to tell you about is you can also check from the permissions, but that is on the high level, right? So that is, okay, manual, this is just high level, top level. But okay, there is a command. How do you give the permission to that command or not? And that is where the deep level, which is not available in the normal UI and which is available in the terminal. So that's where a difference between terminal, right? So in terminal you get some extra commands that you can use it, and which is not available in that UI, which is something like permissions that won't be available. You just click permissions, and you can see all the permissions that I have given, which is recently denied, nothing, and also which is allow. the permission, these are the permissions that I have allowed, but it's okay, it just bash commands or command that it's going to run in the terminal, so you don't have to worry much about. And then MCP, whenever it has to create, edit, fetch, or how to, all those commands that I have given. So this is where you can check the permissions, whether I have given something serious permissions that allow it. So let's say I'm using Superbase as a backend. If I'm asking you to delete a table, I don't want you to delete a table, right? So it has to be careful. So you can check this, and I can also check the ask. So there are three things: allow, ask, and deny. So allow, it's not going to ask you at all. It's just automatic, right? But ask is more about whenever it is asked to do that particular operation, it will ask you first before it's going to do that. But deny is not going to do at all. So it's not going to ask you. So some things like repo delete, you can see that, which is about deleting the whole repo, which of course I don't want to do it. So I don't want the agent to understand. See, I'm talking to agent multiple times. Maybe in some way that it misunderstood that, hey, delete this, but it thought that it deleted the whole repo, which is not good at all. So that's why I put it in deny. So kind of, you can always check it out, what things that you have access. But the best way, if you don't understand this, ask Claude, hey, go and check my permissions for this particular project and see which are the dangerous things that I'm allowing it for free. Not free, allowing it for like auto mode, and guide me on this. So that's the best way to go about it, right? Or if you want to check where the permissions are available in your files, you can always go to files and you can click Claude, and that's where you can see the settings.local.json, and you can see all the permissions that you have given, right? So there is this permission allow, and you can always check this is permission deny, and there is permission ask. So these are the permissions, and if Claude is not able to do certain things, probably it is in permission deny. You can just ask Claude to why you are not able to do that, and because of that. So you can always ask Claude, ask Claude about, hey, this is my permission, go and check it, right? So that's the best way. So you can always check your permissions from here, or in the terminal, just put /permissions, and also you can check it from here, but there is no command called /permissions. For that you need to check it from the terminal. So that is one. So those are the things, like I said, permissions are super important. And this is like a mode, and permissions are deep. Mode is like top level, and permissions are going for every command. So that's why, it's top level and like the bottom level. So you just have to be careful about what kind of permissions that you are giving to the agent and the coding, right? So it just makes it more powerful and also dangerous. So until you have that confidence, go the manual and then auto edits and then auto mode. So you have a good confidence about what it is working on. And also check this particular thing called settings.local.json, which is the place you will find all the permissions related thing. Or just put /permissions and find it in the terminal. Okay, this is on permissions and trust, and this is mostly it. You can find this in settings.local.json, and then permissions, you can put that to see and edit them. So that's mostly on the permissions are important, and it makes your tool powerful in a good way and bad way. So you just have to be careful on what permissions that you are giving. Okay, so this is good. So the next one is the interesting one, which is CLAUDE.md, which is about the memory and everything. So let's discuss. This is about CLAUDE.md file, which is the super important thing in making the whole Claude code powerful. CLAUDE.md file, which is a markdown file, and which agents can easily understand. It's a type of format, and Claude sits between you and the agent. Typically, whenever you send any prompt, whatever that is written in the CLAUDE.md file will go to the agent, and it's not going anywhere. It's for every session, every prompt, whatever it is there, and an instruction that will go to the agent, and based on that, it will act. Just giving like a context. It's a file that goes to the agent all the time. So we'll go through it in deep and on the CLAUDE.md file. Let's do that. So like I said, CLAUDE.md markdown file, which it reads at the start of every session. Whenever a session is created, it understands that, hey, this is the CLAUDE.md file. It's written once and applied to every conversation in the project. So of course you can update and you can change what it is written in the CLAUDE.md file. Whenever you're creating more features, when you write CLAUDE.md file in the beginning of the project, it's different, and it's after you have done many features in the project. So that is one. And where it lives, typically, if it is in the project, when you have a list of files, and it will be stored as CLAUDE.md, and which is like project memory. Then I will talk about the user memory and other things. But before that, let's create one, right? Let's create one and understand from there, so that it will give you a good context. So what I'm going to do is to try out with the Claude.md file. Right now, I want to bring a repo. I have some repository which is stored in the GitHub. And before that, I'm going to give you a quick glimpse about this is our website, which is bhaskarandbuilds.com. And this website right now is hosted in railway.com, which is a place where I can go and host. I have this repo in my GitHub. To anyone who doesn't know what is GitHub, GitHub is a place where I can store all the code files and which can be used to work with a multiple person in the team, and if my team wants to use it, I can give access to them and then they can come and use that. And if I want to host it in any place, like railway.com is one of it, I can use railway.com, or I use Vercel as well. I think the popular one, Vercel.com, to host anything, website or the application. And in this we will use Vercel.com, which we do it later in the masterclass. But I'm just telling that this bhaskarandbuilds.com website code is hosted in the GitHub. And I thought I want to clone this, which I say clone it, take a duplicate, and then put it in my local, in my desktop, and I can we can play around, and then later after some time we can just host it back in GitHub, but in a different name, and try to host that in Vercel so that you understand the process. The reason I'm doing is because you can play around with adding the Claude.md file and others, which right now it doesn't have the Claude.md file. It will be easy for me to show you how Claude.md file is about and how to add that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the Claude desktop, and right now I'm going to create a new folder, because right now it's attached to the Claude content tool CF, which is another project. I don't want to mess that around, so I'm going to create a new project, and I'm going to tell it as BB or like a BB test. So I'm going to put it as BB test, which is Bhaskar and Builds test. I'm going to put that and I'm going to open it. Right now, that is the folder that it's been attached. I'm going to say, hey Claude, since you have the access to my GitHub, I want to clone the Bhaskaran underscore builds underscore website repo here so that I can work around. It's going to clone. Right now, this BB test, let me go back and show you what I'm talking about. Once I go to the Bhaskaran 1073, we'll have this folder which is BB test. And right now it's nothing. I'm going to clone this, and then I'm going to bring the repo, so you should be able to see that. So I told you, right? So this is kind of an action, giving permissions. So it's asking me whether I should allow this, always allow, and also you can see that right now I put it as accepted it, so that I can understand what kind of things it's asking me to make it see, okay, do that. I'm going to gh repo clone. It's going to repo the clone, and I'm going to allow once. It will do that. Yes, you can also always see that, right? It's cloning the repo, and then checking all the gh auth, found it, and found my logged into the github account, and already initialized, and then will clone it. Says it's cloned. Okay, go back and see. You can also see it from here. There is something that it cloned. I can just clone whole thing. It was empty before, but if you want me to show how this is, you can see that, right? This was empty, but right now it's cloned, and I can play around. It's nothing we are going to disturb the current website. Just play around and see what we can do. Right now, I want to talk to Claude, but right now if I create a new session and talking to the Claude, there will be no memory, which is, there is no Claude.md file. You can search for it, and then there is no Claude.md file. It doesn't know, has a good context about it. Every time I have to give the context, or maybe sometimes it doesn't understand the architecture much. So there is a good chance that it might do something different or wrong. That's why it's important to have this Claude.md file. Either you can just go and create your own Claude.md file, which I can show you in my another project, which is content tool CF. I'm going to open this. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to open this Claude.md file, which is it just Claude.md file that I have written a project about the naming convention, typically how I want this project to look like. And you can go and edit on your own. Before that, I want to tell you, like, what is Claude.md file, right? You should put that Claude.md file. So you can typically, the main rules are like, don't want to put everything in the Claude.md file, because it will increase the context and it will increase the number of tokens, since it's going to the Claude agent every time. What you have to do is, you should not give the obvious things like, hey, code at the best way. So that's not good, right? So of course, Claude coding agent, the best coding agent, knows it has to code at the best way. And this gives some more context about architecture, so it understands your project every time it's going to do something new. it has a good context, right? There are certain things that it should not do, and then knowns that typically the coding agent doesn't know, so you just put it there. So like important things. Maximum line that typically everyone recommended is 200 to 300 lines. The reason is it's going to goes and load your the context, which is not good. And many people have tested, and then the one with a big Claude.md file is not best in the output. 200 lines max, and you get the best output out there. Really what you need to do is you have to give about the architecture and everything. Either you have to write it yourself, or there is another way, right? Let me go back to the Bhaskaran builds, and right now there is no Claude.md file. I'm going to put like this option called /init. What it does is no Claude.md file. It goes and creates the Claude.md file based on the project, and it goes and understand the project, and then it going to create a Claude.md file. So you can always do /init to update your Claude.md file as well based on your project. See, maybe I worked on this project for like a month, and then I have changed so much in the project, and maybe I changed the architecture as well a bit. So the Claude.md file won't be updated. So you can keep on give that /init to update your Claude.md file. Let me do that, and I'm good. Okay, now this. Hey, update the Claude.md file, but I see that there is no Claude.md file. Just check it out. See, you don't have to give that, but just /init will help. So I'm just putting it out here. It's going to understand. It's going to understand everything about the project, and then it's going to build a Claude.md file. It's going to run a command, but let me go back to the Whimsical, and then we'll come back and see what it has written. So go back to the Whimsical. I can see that where it lives, typically it lives under Claude.md, which I just showed you. But there is another Claude.md which is not living here, which lives under, let me open that as well. So I open this, right? So I can go to this main, this file. This is the super important file, and it's for the whole project. It's for any time you work with Claude, and it always comes back. This has every context that's going to apply to all the projects. So this is about storing it in the user memory, which is .claude, and Claude.md. And I'm going to show it to you like what we have it here. So nothing much. It's just global rules about token budgets or advisory, like in any session, about whenever we reach the 30,000 tokens. And simple, sometimes you don't even need it, but at the user level, it's going to apply to all the project. So the one that is in the Claude, which is inside the project, it's going to apply to only your project. Like I said, the Claude.md file is the important part, right? The Claude.md, which is stored in the project level. But whenever you see something like .claude /Claude.md, which is, I'm going to show you the important one, which is what you find it in .claude. And .claude typically it's hidden and it's not visible, so you have to make it visible. If you are in the Mac, you can go and check it out. So every information about your Claude history would be stored here. When you install Claude code in your terminal or anywhere in the desktop, first time when you're installing it, it will create a folder, and then all your session and everything would be stored here. That is at the user level. The ones that it has to be gone further, that's going to go as an instruction to all the project. That's user level. But there will be so many things that will be done at the project level. You can also see that this MD, which you can find that I didn't write much. You can keep it empty as well. But if there is something that is a global rule that you want to use it for all the projects, not just one project, then you can put it here. That is at the user level. But also you can do it at the project level as well. .claude.md, so that you can do. And so there are other things. You can also use Claude.local.md, which is yours. Whenever you put it as local and which is just yours, you're not going to push it to GitHub, and when you're doing it, it's going to stay in your local, in your desktop, not going to commit at all. But you can also put Claude.md in each subfolder. Something like how this assets or design, I can put Claude.md here. This is going to work only when Claude is going to access that particular folder. So that's the level of detail that you can go. It's just an understanding for the Claude agent to prioritize the Claude.md file at the first. So that's the greatest thing about it. And see, for Claude, For Claude Code, this is a Claude.md file, but for Codex or other for Codex, which is from ChatGPT, this is going to be agents.md file. So yeah, so that's mostly about it. But let me say, no Claude.md file existed. So let me say no Claude.md file existed. So it created a Claude.md file. And but I'm not able to see it, and but let me close that. So that is one issue as well. So it typically it won't refresh. Let me go. Yeah, it created the Claude.md file that is outside, right? This is the reason why it's outside. It's because it's global for the whole project. If it is inside on any subfolder, then it's only for that particular subfolder. Let me open it, and I'm going to see what it did. I'm going to open this. Just giving some commands that it use, and whenever it's going to deploy it, and you can see that architecture level, what kind of architecture that we used, and typically just to give more information about how we store the coding files, and some bit information about conventions, like what are the other things that we are using it. So this is good, right? So just giving the coding agent more context. So that's what it just created. You don't have to write any of this. Claude will understand your repo and create a Claude.md file. So okay, the obvious question is like, okay, now you just clone the repo, but what should I do, right? What should I do when I'm going to start the new repo, right? We just ask, hey, I'm going to build a website using React or like any particular language, and it's going to create a simple initial starting point for you. And then once you start building it out, and then after that you can ask it to, hey, create Claude.md file or /init, and then it's going to create a Claude.md file. You just have to be careful on what you're going to put in. But if Claude is going to do that, because Claude has the best model, and then they should be able to do it what you're asking for. So that is one. And of course in it, like I said, it's architecture decisions, what are the libraries that you're using, and the commands that are easy to get wrong. So things like that, that you want to make sure that Claude should remember that, which is important for your project. And what stays out, like anything that is like it could understand by obvious, by reading your code, and like you don't have to put your secrets or keys or anything, right? And things only need occasionally, like if there is something that is not needed every time, so it can be a skill, which we will talk it in the next chapter. So those are the things, and it loads every session, and then try to keep it under 200 lines. So you can always check it out /init to write a first draft, and also what you can do is also you can do /memory to edit afterwards. If you want to edit it, you can directly edit it from here, or you can also let me do that. I'm going to create a new terminal, and I'm going to scroll it up so that you have more space to see. I'm going to put Claude, and I'm going to put /memory, and you can see that there are two memories, right? One that is saved in the main Claude, which is the user level, and there is project level. The one that is here is the project level, which is Claude.md. But the one that stores in the main folder, which is Claude, so that is at the user level. That will be gone to every project. So if you want to edit it, you can edit it as well, but we are not going to do it. But yeah, so that's mostly on the that's mostly on the Claude.md. But also, I want to just show you about the context. You can also see this context, which is from here. Show you. So the context, send, like I said, right? So it's going to be sent to the project, like to the agent all the time. So you need to understand, what it will be in the context window. So that's what I'm going to talk about. But we'll talk about the context later. But I'm just going to give you that information about the memory files. This is what I'm talking about, which is Claude.md at both the project level and also at the user level. You can see that memory files. Right now it just brings that one, but if you create a new session, it will load and it will that Claude.md as well. So then there will be two files, which is at the user and the project level, that goes to the context every time. So that you can easily find the number of tokens that it consumes every time you talk to the agent. So that's mostly on it, and the context we will discuss about later. And let's move to skills. Okay, so the next one is skills. Skills are a super important part of the Claude Code, and it's what makes the whole Claude Code more powerful. So yeah, so let's start with the skills, and I want to just give you a good context about what is skill. So skills, you can find it in the folder which is a skill.md file. And I think many of you have used, whoever have used Claude, I think they should have installed some kind of a skill to make it more expert. Okay, so what is a skill? A skill is just a reusable knowledge or a prompt, right? So it just, you don't want to tell to the Claude that every time, hey, be an SEO expert and then do this and then be a expert UI UX designer. You should follow this, and you can't tell to that in every command. So that's why we have the skill, which we have so many skills. It's just a reusable knowledge of the prompt, and it written once. I think the main difference, I think you can easily understand that Claude.md file is always loaded. It goes to the session every session, but skill doesn't load all the time. It's going to load only when it is needed, right? So you can always say that the rule is typically always relevant, which is Claude.md file. Sometimes relevant, then it should be moved into a skill. It's as simple as that. So I think many of you, everyone knows about what is a skill, but I can also show you some of the skills that we have done, and I'm going to go back, and there is once you go to the settings, you can always see the different skills, and you can create your own skill as well, which is there is a skill created given by Anthropic. You can just make it as one skill. Hey, this is my workflow, and then make it as a skill. So next time when I can just put slash and then call that particular skill. So of course we have many skills around, like okay, write this as a human, and then there is viral hooks, and then X post writer that helps us do follows particular format. Yeah, so me and my team, we all use it, right? But this is at the whole the level, like this is at the whole level. This for your whole account, the Claude account. But what if you're trying to do it for, let's say, at the project level? Right now you have this basket builds, and you want to bring certain skills that make your project more good, right? So and you can see that there are a couple of skills that we have already installed, and I think one, this is SEO audit, but it's not loading it out. It's not probably in the proper format. But what I can do is let's bring some skills, and I can also show the skills that we have done it for content tool CF, right? So let's say this is this another project that I mentioned, and you can see that the skills that we have added. So we did some, I don't know, competitor analysis skill, which is not needed for sure, but we have added pencil design, which is for design tool, and we have added Superbase because it's connected to Superbase in the backend for the database, and also Tailwind design system. We can add many skills, but I want to tell you, like okay, we will add some skills, but how do you add, like where do you find the best skills, right? So that's where we are here. You can what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this. So there are two places that typically I go and find the skills, the best skills, which is one is skills.sh, or and there is another place where which is Claude marketplace.com, which is where you have skills, but I'm going to go back to that main index where I can go to the skills. So you can, right, so you can have so many skills in that, and it all just super high quality skills, and it's been installed by many people, and many times, and you can see that there is 2.5 million install, and then 661. That's for the front end design, because since it's released by Anthropic, and you can see from Versal Labs, they release some React best practices. If you're going to build a React project, use that skill, and then so that it will follow the best practices in React when going and building anything from React, right? So kind of there is so many skills that are like popular skills, and also you can find the same thing from skills.sh, which is a part of Versal.com. From Versal. So you can find that find skill, which is 2.8 million installs, and front end design, and there is so many skills. And let's say this, since Basket builds which is a website, so I want to install some skill. Let's see something on the front end design, and let's do it. So to install, you just have to put npx skills add. I can just copy it and then paste that, or I can just copy this whole thing and then I can just put it there. Hey, I want to install this skill to my repo, to my project, go and install it. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it to ask Claude. Let's see. Hey Claude, I want to install this particular front-end design skill to my repo. Go ahead and add it. Okay, it's going to add, and it's before it's going to do the research, it's going to ask me, hey, should I go about do it? Yes, allow once. But if you have given that in the auto mode, no, you don't have to. It's not going to ask you some permission. It's going to straight away bring that skill from the web and then put it in your repo so that you can use it anytime you want. Let's do that. It's installing the skill, and it's first trying to bring that from GitHub. Okay, so it installed the skill, and let me do that. Let me go and close it and come back. So I'm going to open the file again because it's one of the things that we should do. Now I have the file here. Okay, it has added the front-end design skill in my project repo, right? So right now I'm going to click that. I'm not able to read it from here. That is one of the drawback, which is an issue. But typically you always have, you'll have a skill.md file, and you should be able to do it. So I can also open it from the cursor. Let me do it if I would be able to do it directly from here. Okay, MD file. Let me see why I'm not able to see it as the full, and let me close it. And since it says that it added this skill.md and license.txt, I can always go and check this project, what happened there, which is BB test, and I can go on to the Claude skills and front-end design. Yeah, so those are the things, right? So in this probably it should have two, basically it should have that two files, which is not available here, which is weird as well. So let me close it and open it back and see if it is available. It's still not, but you understand that, right? So what you will have it. I'm going to go back and show you what it is stored. Yeah. So this is what it will be. There will be any skill that you take, any front-end design or any skill that you take, it will always have skill.md file, which is what you will see about this name, description, and there is so much information about what I want to do with this particular skill, and where you should be careful, go with the design principles, and so much information. But it's not going to load in every time, right? Because it's just a waste of tokens. So what it does, it's going to load only this name and the description, right? So let me open this in the text format, so you should be able to see it. So this is it, what we're going to do. Okay, it opened here. So you can see that the front name, which is front-end design, and description, this is about this particular skill. So this is going to be load with the Claude, with the Claude code every time, not the other things. Like whenever I'm asking to the Claude that, hey, I want to improve my front-end design, or can you follow the best practices, and it understands that, hey, I have a skill which is front-end design, and I need to follow the best practices which is in that particular skill. So it goes and understand what it is in the skill, and then only it loads that particular skill. Until then, it's not going to load that front-end design skill at all, because it's a waste of token. And like I said, when it loads only when it is relevant, right? So Claude agent will handle that basically. So I hope that you got the context about this. Let me go back, and this is how you install a skill, and this is what skill is about. It's just giving you the agent superpower, right? Not all agents, or Claude Code is not superpower in all the skills, right? So that's why you have to choose what skills that you want, and then you bring it here. And the super important thing that I want to mention here is you should be really, really careful about what skills that you are going to install, because okay, those are like good skills, which is it's been installed by so many people, so you can trust it and then you can install. But the thing is, if I'm going to the skills, and there will be so many skills, maybe some skills are like, you can see that this is like a million skills, and there will be some skills just it's not good, or like there will be some prompt injection, which is like something that it runs, it won't be visible directly in the prompt, but on the skill, but it will run in the behind to try to recover some extra information from you, which is not good for sure, right? So that's why I use this specific skill, which is skill spectre from NVIDIA. So what they did was they released this particular skill, and you install it at your the whole the desktop level. So whenever you're going to install any skill, it's going to scan it. So what the skill about, there will be so many security vulnerabilities that you can find it from any skill, right? It's just a security scanner before uploading any skill. So I'm going to tell you how you can just give it to Claude, and then it will install this. So it will run it before you are going to install any skill. But I'm going to tell you like how this works, right? So you there are so many vulnerabilities, and I want to tell you, and you can see that there are 68 vulnerability patterns that across 17 categories that the skill inspector can detect, which typically I'm not able to detect all those, right? So it's just impossible for me to go through that skill, every skill that I'm going to download in that particular order. It's just impossible. So it detects all the issues, and then if there is anything that it's about this particular skill, and then it gives a score. If it is a safe or a medium safe or a high or critical, then I can choose which one is good for me. And okay, if it is a safe, I can download the skill, I can upload it to my project. If not, I will be more caution. If it is medium, okay, but if it is high critical, typically I don't install. And if it is medium, I try to understand what this specific vulnerability is about. So it's a good skill, upload this, and because since we work with skills all the time, so that's a great way. But yeah, so that's mostly about this is where they live. Typically the skills live under Claude folder, and then the skills, and then also you can find the skills under Claude marketplaces or skill.sh, and then try to install the skill inspector so that whatever skill that you're going to upload, it will be more safe. Yeah, so that's mostly on that. Okay, so I hope you got a good understanding about what skill is. Skill is just a reusable workflow or a prompt, and created only for specific purpose. So your agent will do the best work whenever it's needed. It calls and calling an expert. Hey, I have a project, SEO expert or a UI UX designer, come and finish the project and go back, and I will call you only when I need it, right? So that's what skill is about. So I hope you got a good understanding, and let's move to subagents. Subagents are the one that is super powerful, and I would say it is just different. It's just like a Claude agent, but you can create subagents for your own purpose. So subagents, right? Subagents are just it's nothing different. It's just an agent. The top agent what we have is Claude Code agent, the main agent, but then you have subagents. Subagents created for specific purpose, and it goes and run it only when it is needed, and then it comes back and be in silent, right? So that's what we're going to focus. So we have what is a subagent, and like I said, a subagent, it has its own fresh context window. It's there will be skills run inside your conversation. Okay, it's a separate agent with its own context window. Like there will be no history and no skills involved, and only the prompt you give it. So let's go back and understand this more. How to create a subagent, right? So in this project Bhaskar and Bill's website, I don't have any subagent, because I think you can see it from here. Subagents are typically live under Claude folder, and it will be leaving it as agents. If I go back to my another repo, which is content tool, and I'm going to show you some agents as well, and I have some agents, which I have two agents, which is codereviewer.md, and also the RLS auditor, which is row level security of for the Superbase, which is I'm using. Superbase is the backend that I'm using for this particular project. Row level security is just we create so many tables, and those tables are has to be secure, and we put row level security policies, and this will always audit that we are following the best practices, right? So it's just a sub agent, and it runs only when it is needed, which is like when we create a new table or when we are changing the policy. So that's the base of it, and you can see that when I click it, you can see this RLS auditor.md file. It always has this the format which is name, description, and what it does, and what's the model it's going to use. So you can specify the model that you want your subagent to run. Yeah, so just a Superbase security auditor for this Next.js project, and what it's going to audit, and it's going to follow the best practices whenever anytime create table must be followed whenever I create a new table, and all those things, right? So this is just an instruction and for how this agent should run, and the top level, right? So that's it, right? So and what I'm going to do is it's a simple way. You can create an agent, and what you can do is in this particular project, or also you can go back to the Bhaskar and Bills, the repo, that you can ask, right? So hey, it just do the reverse prompting, right? So you don't know to which you want to create a sub agent that makes it more useful for you, and I'm going to ask okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to ask back, hey, I want to create sub agents, but I don't know which one should I create. Can you go through my repo and then give me some suggestions on the sub agents that I can create? That will be useful for me in when I'm going forward. Hey, yeah, it's just asking the Claude to give back, because the models are really powerful, right? The models are super powerful, and it's just best to the models are simply powerful. You can do the reverse prompting and just ask some some inputs that you can get from the model, and you can create that. So it gives me some suggestions on visual QA tools that it can use, and CSS auditor, like the files that we have. We use CSS for the for the design, for of course for everything around that. And page scaffolder, I can read it out, and this is like strong fits and also worth it if you touch these areas, like ally reviewer. I'm not sure what this is about, and there is like JS guard checker, and also SEO regarding that. But let me check, visual QA, what is this about? Okay, run checks, then short space menu, read the PNGs from this, and then reports what broke at 1440, which is the desktop size and the mobile size. Highest value here, no test suit, and then driver already does the hard part. Screenshot reading is token heavy, so isolating in a subagent keeps main context clean. Okay, it's good for me. It's just what it's going to do is it reads the PNGs from different, and then it's going to help me reports what broke at a certain specific size. So I'm going to ask more, and probably I can just copy it. I won't understand, of course. Hey, help me understand this about this particular agent, and once I understood it, let's create that agent. So it's running it out, and then it's asked me, okay, allow Claude to run check driver prerequisite. Okay, it's going to check it. Okay, it's just going to think it in a way that whether it's really need, and going to check and run the commands and come back to me and report that what this is about particularly. Okay, I can understand that, and let's see. So what this agent is, it's a I understand what is subagent for sure, but okay, so it's known, my CSS has 3 breakpoints, which is 1200, 768 and 375. The driver only shoots 1440 and 390. Okay, the 768 tablet block is never exercised. Okay, understood. So I need to read this in depth and see if we really need that. Yeah, so that's the critical part about it. But if you want, we can of course go through that, and we can read it out, right? So you can allow this, and you can run this agent, and you can see that how it is creating an agent and when it's going to use it. So it's going to create that agent, which is visual QA.md, and I'm going to show you how this is working. But you can always figure out the use case, like what I did for my other project, which is RLS auditor or other agents that it is really needed. But here we need to understand this more. I'm just showing it out to you to how this is creating, right? So you can, this is more like I said, reverse prompting, and go back and see what it does. So you won't be visible, and I need to close that and come back and open, and you can see that we have created an agent, which is visual QA.md. So I'm going to tell you that, okay, this is what is the description, runs the headless browser driver and visually inspects the rendered site. So yeah, so it's just a way to because we use screenshots, a lot of screenshots, and it's going to help that, right? So but yeah, so that's mostly on this subagents. So you know how to create that, when to do that. So there is no command to create any subagents. You just ask it to create a subagent, and for this particular purpose, and it's going to create a subagent, and you should be able to find the subagents inside here. And the thing about subagents is, it's, you have to give that normal name, description, and the tools that it's going to do, and what's the access that it's going to have. And also you can choose the model that you want it to run. If you want to use different models, you can use different models as well, like Sonnet or Fable or Opus. But if you don't give that, if you don't mention about the model, it's going to go with the default model. So that's what it's about subagents. Subagents are like, specifically done for a specific purpose, like a skill, but agents has more powerful way of doing it, right? Skills is just, .md file, not much context, can't take more actions, but agents can do similar to the Claude Code agent. So yes, that is more on the subagents. I got a good understanding, and let's go to the next one, which is hooks. So what is hook? right? A hook, it just, it's a code, it's a code that you want to run it when it is needed. And it just, when do you need that, right? So it can be specific purpose, and typically hooks can be initialized pre-tool use and the post-tool use. Those are the two places, and I will show you about what this is about. So let's go back, and this is what I think you can understand that about what this is about, which is Claude Code Agent. And Claude Code Agent will be like model and harness, which is what we discussed. And harness is making what is the tool, and what is that, it's a mix of permissions and the hooks and test logs, and there is so much like Claude.md, or there is skills, and there is so much, but I'm just listed few things. But what is that hook, which is right, before action? So Claude will always take some actions, right? Okay, that's what makes the agent more powerful. So Claude will go and edit something like your file, certain files that it goes and edit it, and that is before action. And once it's done with the edit, that is after action, that is the second point. And once it's done with the session, you're done with the session, then there is end of session. So typically what it is, before action, after action, right? This is before you're using the tool, before it's going to go and edit it. But then there is an option called after, once the editing is done and then the whole process is done, which is after action, that you can see the second one. And then there is end of session, which is test or notify anything, right? So there will be certain files that you don't want it to edit it at all. So you can run this particular hook, and this hook will automatically run whenever it's going to, before it's going to edit anything, and it's going to check it that whether you're going to edit that particular file or not. So you have to create a hook before that, before it's going to use any particular tool. But there is this after action, which is, okay, don't do anything, once you're done with the edit, go and run this particular script or the code and particular hook, and then execute specific thing and go and check, right? And also there is this thing called end of session, which is, okay, once you're done with the session, just notify me via certain way, and so that I can be notified that, okay, this is done. So that is what hook is about. Hook is just ask it to run a particular code after a particular time, just before the tool use or after the tool use. So that's it. So let me go back, and I'm going to tell you that how this works, right? So the thing is about, there is no option, there is no command to put /hooks. So which is not working, right? So you need to run this in the terminal. I'm going to put that /hooks, and the hooks that are available, we have this pre-tool use and the post-tool use. Pre-tool use, which is, like I said, this is before pre-action, before it's going to do anything on the code. The post-tool use, that is typically after, once the editing is done and then the work is done, so then it's going to do that. We are not going to create any hook right now. Here you can ask the same, Claude to, hey, I want to run some hooks, and what should be the best thing? I created specific hooks for the another project, which is content tool CF, and you can see that. And this is, like I said, this is a command, this is some code that it's going to run. Yeah, this is going to be run after the post tool use. So what I did was I created this particular hook just to check, because I told it not to have more than 200 lines of code in a particular file. So whenever it is done with the editing of that particular file, this hook, which is post tool use, you can see that post tool use will run it and check whether it's following that my restriction, not to have more than 200 lines of code in a particular file. So of course I have put that in the Claude.md file, but sometimes it doesn't go and do that. It misses that. But when you have a hook, it runs that hook, so it's more like an extra person to check it, right? So that's what the hooks are powerful, and if you want to use it, but we use it for some specific cases, but mostly not. You can run it and you can figure out those ways as well for the check size. So this is what it is. You can always find the hooks from the Claude hooks, those files, and yeah, so you can always find that. And also you can find it from settings.json, which you can see that there is this hook when you're going to use, which is post tool use, and what it's going to do, edit and write. And this is the command, this is the file that it's going to execute. So the main file would be in the settings.json, and the script file, which is the code that it's going to run, which you can find it in the hooks subfolder. Yeah, so that's mostly on it. And you understand what hooks are. Let's go back, and you had a good understanding. Okay, so this is regarding the hooks. You've got a good understanding and about the subagents, hooks. And now let's go to the context, the one that is managing everything, the new session, and which is super powerful, right? So it's important because you will do a lot of things. You will do a lot of things with Claude Code, which is like having a skill, having the Claude.md, having this plugin, having MCPs, having subagents, having hooks. So everything will be in that particular context. That's what we're going to talk about. What is this context? So this context, what is the context window is, you always have this context window. I'm going to open this. Going back to here, I'm going to open this Bhaskar and Builds website, and I'm going to show you what this is about. Okay, the first thing I want to, you can just go and see the context, and which is the context window, and you can see that the context window is 1 million context, because we are using the Claude Opus 5, which has this 1 million context window. So you can send that many tokens you want. But what we are sending is so far right now is 89.7k, which is, we are using almost 9% of the total tokens that we can push it in that particular one session. So I can just click it, and then I can see the deep dive, right? What it is taking and what it is consuming. So messages, it's taking almost 5.4%, which is all the messages, whatever we have created, everything, every message will go as a context to the model, to the to the agent, and also it has its own system tools which Claude runs, and skills, it has like 1%, because we have some skills that we have installed in our repo, which will go as well, but not the whole skill. But like I said, it goes with only the name and the description, because it's not necessary to load every skill in the context, right? So it's going to take the the name and description of that particular skill, so it knows when it has to run it. So, and then there is MCP tools if you have installed, and then there is the system prompt, custom agents, memory files, which is what I had said as the Claude.md file, and MCP tools, it's surprising because it's bringing that whimsical, because I stored it at the user level, so which is bringing that MCP as loading it to to all the projects, even if I didn't install it at this project level. And there is this free space, which is like almost 91% free space, and I can also see the custom agents, which is, there are some custom agents that I have installed, which is not in this particular project, which is Bhaskar and Builds, but it's been installed in some other at the user level, so it just loads every time it loads any project. So you got this right. So this is what the context. So right now, let's say I'm using a lot of context, which is not good. So and you can always understand the whole context, and you can always do that from here as well. You can always run it from the terminal as well, which you can do it as /context, and you can see, yeah, it's going to bring that same exact thing, like here it's a better UI, and you can run it from here as well. You can check this and understand more of it, of course. So you can always do context/context all to expand. So you can do context, sorry, not this, but you can always go back and see a detailed way, which you can do it from this particular UI, but terminal, it provides super detailed about which one is taking more tokens, right? And you can see that the MCPs that are available loaded on the project, and also the custom agents, how much it's taking as a token in every skill, in every plugin, and the memory files, what's the number of tokens that it's taking it out, 243 tokens, and Claude.md file is taking 2k tokens, right? So you can always check individual level which one is consuming more tokens, which you can typically find it here, understood, but if you want to go deep, you can do that from that particular context. So let me go and check this as well if we miss any other information. Yeah, so there are certain things which I will discuss to you later, but this is more on the context. So everything about context that has the MCP, that has the memory.md file, which is Claude.md file, and also it has so many things, the other ones like hills and the system prompt and the messages, everything will be loaded in that particular context. So you need to really maintain that, otherwise your session will be super big and you can't, and then the token consumption will be a lot, which we will discuss about token optimization at the end. So I will cover a bit more on that. So that is great. And now let's strike it out and move to the next super important part, which is MCP. MCP is a model context protocol. It just, Claude is the one that created that MCP protocol, MCP, which is, model context protocol. And it's just a way to talk to any tools for the agents. Agents can talk to it in a direct way rather than via APIs. It depends on the project. If you want to talk to any agent in any tool, that you can bring that MCP from that particular tool, and you can connect to the project, and agents will talk to it directly to do certain actions. And MCPs, there is so much, and let me just close that. Not needed everything. So okay, let's go back, and I want to give you a good glimpse about what MCP is in a simple way, right? So when do you have this go to the MCP, right? Whenever you need more capacity, and then when need Claude can't do this alone, because let's say I use this particular backend, which is Subagents, right? So which is the backend, and I want to connect to my project. How do I talk to it? So that is the extra capability that Claude wants to have. So then you bring that MCP. Okay, there is Subagents will have a particular MCP, and that we are adding a new capability to the to Claude. And let me close the other ones. Once you do that, so then it can be because it can be because GitHub, you can bring the GitHub MCP as well, so that you can easily pull and push from the local, or you can bring a DB or other things, like even I have my whimsical, I have my MCP for it. So what is whimsical? It's a Miro board, and we can just do all the user flows here. And then once you have the MCP, then you can authenticate via local or remote. When I say local, it's more like you have your desktop application, then you can connect the MCP to the desktop application for that desktop app, or you can run it in the remote as well. So once you do that, then there is you have to authenticate, so that it gives that permission that you are a right person to talk to that particular tool and to your own account. And then Claude discovers the tools that what it can do. Maybe it can write certain things, it can create certain things, it can delete certain things. So and then it goes and check, okay, is it good with those actions? And then if it is, you don't want to give that edit access. Hey, I just want to read that particular project via MCP. Then I don't want it to write or edit, or which is same, edit or delete or update. So that's how you control the access. So and I'm going to show you a couple of things. Let me show you the settings and the MCPs, that the connectors, I would say. Right now none of the connectors are there, but I can just go to the whimsical, and there are certain things, right? The interactive tools, like it can create document, it can edit, it can generate the diagram, and so it can these are all like interactive tools. This is read only tools, this is write or delete tools, right? And so those are the access level, the access that you give it at the deep, right? So that what you can give it at the MCP. So you don't want to give every access to that particular project that you're connecting. Maybe that project needs just read it, which means understand what it is in the database and then get some information. So that's what it's MCP is about. But I want to tell you, like, I want to show you how the MCP we can install. And I'm going to bring a project which is Superbase, and let's connect it to the Bhaskaran builds repo, and connect the MCP. So I'm going to go to the dashboard. I'm going to bring this particular prompt tracker. I'm going to copy this particular organization ID, and I'm going back to Claude, and I'm going to tell, and I like whenever I try to connect MCP, try to do it in the terminal. It works much better because it has more access and understand that repo. I'm going to put that, and I'm going to say, hey, I want to connect the MCP, Superbase MCP to this particular project. I want to do it at the project level, so I can, this is only to the project level, not at the user level. So let's do it, right? So the reason I said, okay, do it at the project level, because I want the MCP to connect only to this particular project and not to at the user level. When I say user level, it's to the many projects, right? So which is not good. And I'm going to give it yes. It's going to run. So you can just say yes and don't ask again for Claude MCP, which is, it's not going to get, it's not going next time. It's not going to ask you more about that. So whenever you give that, don't ask again for Claude MCP. What it does, it's going to update your permissions, and there it's going to put that allow. So every time it's going to do that bash command, and it's not going to ask you at all. So that's what it is, and I'm going to put yes. So typically whenever it's creating any MCP, connecting any MCP, you can always check. It will create the mcp.json file inside the project folder, and right now there is no mcp.json file because we haven't connected any MCP to the Bhaskaran Builds website because it's not needed. But I just want to show you this, right? So it asking me, right? So do you want the read only or full write access for the Superbase MCP server? So I'm going to say, okay, I'm okay with read only access, and I'm just going to put, if you want full access, you can do that. But I'm going to just say read only access. So because I just want to understand what it is in the project whenever I want to understand that. But I'm going to say yes. Okay, of course it's going to ask more question, because if I say no, and then it's not going to ask any question. But for now, I'm going to just put it as yes, and this will update the permissions as well. Okay, so right now it's created that .mcp.json file. See, whenever you connect any MCPs, it will create that file at the project level. So but it's not available here, so typical way, and we need to close it and open it back again. And I want to show you this. So there is this mcp.json file, and you can see that mcp.json is connected, right, which is Superbase. So right now you can talk to it, and hey, whatever that is in the project, we can get the information here and be able to do certain things. But right now we have given only the read access, that you can see that, and read only is true, but the rest we haven't given like write access or delete access or anything to that particular project. And if you want, we can do, because whenever you are going to build an application, you have to give that write and the edit access update, so which is needed. So yeah, so this is how you do that MCP. And you connect, you bring any tool, and then it has so much of a power, because that's what makes the agent more powerful, right? You bring different tools, you can talk to each other, but at the same time restrict what it can do and what it should not do. That's what it is about. Okay, so that is on the MCP level. Let me go back on to the MCP. Yeah, so that is mostly on it. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is plugins. Powerful tool, one of the powerful tools in Claude Code Harness, able to install plugins. What are those plugins, right? So I'm going to show you again exactly what it is, right? So plugin, it's a bundle. It's a bundle of, we talked about skills, we talked about hooks, we talked about subagents, we talked about, I think, the commands, MCPs, and different settings. So all this will come together as a plugin. That's what plugins are powerful, because sometimes there is one particular plugin that brings all the value inside it. So that's what plugin is about. Let's go to explain what plugin is in a detailed way. But like I said, you can see that the plugins, or like it's a mix of the skills, which is reusable workflows, agents, specialized helpers, hooks, which is like automation. You want to do certain automation at a regular interval but with guardrails, and MCP servers and settings default for the team. So all this, sometimes it just plugin can be a mix of just skills and agents. Sometimes plugin can be a mix of skills and hooks. So all this can, for a particular tool, it can come together, and that's what we call it as a plugin. And what do we do and how do we install, right? So that's where the good part is about the plugins. And typically you can find all the plugins that you have installed in the Claude settings.json file. So I'm going to the content tools here, which is where you could find the plugins that I have installed. So you can go to the settings.json, and you can see the plugins that I have installed. I have installed Superbase plugin, I have installed Claude Code Setup, and I have installed Hookify, front-end design, and Context 7, and code review, GitHub security guidance, and I have installed so many plugins. And so how do I install? Okay, so what you have to do is, I'm not sure we can do it from here, not much, right? So what you have to do is go and do a search /plugin in the terminal. Let me open the terminal as well, so it will be easy for you. I just opened the terminal. I'm going to close this, so we get the terminal in this side. So I'm going to close this as well. So we have enough space, and not here. I can also create a new terminal, and I'm going to put Claude, create a new session, and this session has been activated, and I'm going to put /plugins. So once I put /plugins, it will bring me the list of plugins that it has. Discover plugins. There are like 263 plugins that are available. I can go and install, and but also you can see the plugins that I have installed and from the marketplace. And so I have added certain things to the marketplace, which is Claude plugin official. which is like 276 plugins available from the Claude. Anthropic has released that 276 plugins in one Claude plugin official. So what you have to do is, first time when you go and search for slash plugin, you won't see all those plugins. So you have to install one thing, which is what I would say as Claude plugin official, which will bring you 276 plugins available for you to install. So things like code simplifier and which you can see that those are also from Claude plugin official, and you can see the different plugins that are really good plugins and which you can download it from the Claude plugin official. So the one thing that you have to do is go back. How do I find and install? So you have to go to this GitHub Anthropic / Claude plugin official. You just have to copy it, and you don't have to even copy it. You just copy the URL and ask Claude to hey, install this plugin marketplace. So which will bring you like 276 plugins. So some of the best plugins are available. It's safe to download it from them. So they have a good mix of different plugins available in the marketplace, which is what I would say is important. And first you have to do that. You can choose the different plugins that you want to install, but I have installed some plugins which I can show you to you why I have installed it. So this is not, I have installed some plugin like code review, and you can see that I haven't used it in like in number of days, long time. There are certain plugins that are not used, and but when you think that there are certain plugins that I haven't used, it's better to remove them, so it's not taking up some memory space. Like GitHub plugin as well, Subagents plugin as well, not didn't use. But there are certain things like that I have used at the project level, which is Claude Code Setup, CLAUDE.md, which is a plugin that stores all the sessions in the vectors as a semantic way. Like if I want to search for the good thing about this is we create different sessions for a project, right? So okay, I just create terminal 1, terminal 2, which is like a different session. I have created it whenever I initialize Claude, which is like a new session. The problem with that is, in a project you might have like 100 sessions, but other sessions doesn't have context with the other sessions. So the Claude mem is more like a brain. It just it connects all the sessions, so it can understand when it's on, it tries to understand the context of different sessions. So that's what it makes it great about. There is other plugins like skill creator, security guidance I have installed, Versal plugin as well, Pencil MC, which is for, I have used it for design, which is we use this design tool called pencil.dev. And there are other plugins, Caveman, which I will discuss, Playwright, which is a super good skill, because it's not a skill, it's a plugin. What it does is, once I build any certain features, I don't even have to go and test it. This Playwright plugin will go and test it automatically, right? It opens the browser and it puts some credentials, and it goes to the app and it takes screenshot and makes sure that whatever the feature that it has built, it is working. So that's what makes this Playwright plugin more powerful. There are so many plugins similar in this way, and they are super powerful, and that's why I have so many plugins like Superpower. And you can always connect, you can always remove that by clicking it out. Yeah, so like plugins are powerful, and you just have to install and use it for a particular purpose. It's just tremendously powerful. There are things like you can install it at the project scope level or the user scope level, which I said project scope level is only for your project. These all the projects, these are all the plugins that is only to this available to a particular project, not outside anywhere else. But if it is at the user level, which means this is going to be available to all the projects, right? Any project that I'm going to create, these plugins will be available and this will work. And that's why even if I created another project, which is Bhaskar Builds, which is a different project, but you can see it in the context, right? So let me go back and try to do it this way. Yeah, I'm not able to open, but let me see why. It's kind of a bit weird, not able to click that. Which is weird. Okay, it's loading the breakdown, and you can see that custom agents, certain ones like Caveman, and which is not even installed in this particular project, but we have installed it at the global level, which is at the user level. So that's what I would say, an important concept that you should always understood this. So which is, I'm going to create this mind map, and so that it's easy for you to understand the scope, which is one at the project and one at the user level and one at the local level. So project, which is at the project level, for the project scope at the project level, and user, this is for all the projects, and when it is local, it's not only for you, so it's not going to any other, I would say, like any other projects, like it will be in the project level, but when you're going to push it to your GitHub and someone in your team is going to use it, so they won't be see it, they're not seeing your plugins, whatever that is available, or skills or anything, if it is just in the local. So that's what makes, I would say, the local. Okay, I hope you got the understanding. Plugin, how do I find it and install it? We talked about /plugin, and what is a plugin? It's a bundle of the skills, hooks, agents, and MCPs and everything. Yeah, a plugin can have multiple skills, and this is because of that. Caveman, it's one of a plugin and it has multiple skills, and Cloud Security is one of a plugin and it has multiple skills. This Cloud Security, Explore, Patch Generator, Patch Verifier, and Scan. So this is how the naming has been done. So that's about the naming. And if you want to build your own plugins, you can do that as well. And installing someone else's code, just be careful that when you're going to install. But if you're installing it from the Claude marketplace, so it's good. So you don't have to worry much about, because it's official. So yeah, that's mostly about plugins. Go and find the best plugins from the Claude marketplace and install some other good ones, which is prominent and used by many people. So perfect. The next one, scheduling jobs. So scheduling jobs is, you want to schedule something at a particular interval to run it. Maybe you are in a team and then you're working together with many people and everyone is working on the same project, and you are a project lead and you want to understand what everyone is shipping to the GitHub. So if everyone is shipping certain things in certain way, and you want to understand what kind of PR request, which is pull request, has been given, and you can review that, and then you can push it to the live branch so that every user can go and see it. So you can schedule it for many reasons, different reasons, and we will talk about the different way of scheduling it, and in every place, in sessions, in cloud, and in local, and what this is about. So but first I want to tell you, why we need to schedule. There are different reasons. Sometimes you want to have a morning summary of what changed overnight, which is what I just told you, and maybe dependency and security checks on a cadence, or and then watching build and reporting failures. There are multiple reasons, but of course you will figure out why you need that once you do the scheduling task. There are multiple, which is you can run it in the cloud, desktop, or /loop. I'm going to cover this everything. Let's go. I'm going to close this. So if you're running any in the terminal, if you want to run some loop, you can. If you're in the terminal, if you want to run some loop, you can just you can put it as /loop, and you can see that run a prompt or / command on a recurring interval, hey, every 5 minutes loop, go and do this, and check the session and whether it's done or not. You can run the loop for many things, but also you can ask, right, okay, same reverse prompting, what should I run the loop for? So that is one way of running a loop. So it's checking, there is nothing, of course, no loops or here, and we haven't put any loops. If we can do that, and just ask it to create a loop for certain things, and we can do that, and that is one way. But the thing about /loop is it will be in that session. Right now we are in particular one session, and if you just leave the session, that loop will die. So our laptop has to open, and the loop has to be in that particular session. If you remove the session, that loop will go away, right? So it's not going to work at all. And you can always kill the loop. Okay, just delete the loop. You can do that. That is one. And the second one, which is going to the home, and also you can do, there is a way to schedule something which is scheduled, right? But the second part, this is about you can only schedule it by from the laptop. You can't do it, it stays in your laptop. If your laptop is not awake, it's not going to run it. So that's why if you're scheduling it for 7 o'clock every day, I want to bring some content ideas, it has to be there, and which is what it is about, right? The scheduled task, typical ones, not in the cloud. So I run some task which is Monday content ideas. Every Monday I want this to run at 7 o'clock and scan the week's AI tools, agents, and AI plus creator news, and draft me good ready post for the reel and the LinkedIn and the X, right? So it skipped today, and then but it didn't try to run it at 7-8 today, but because I didn't open my laptop at 7 o'clock, and then it ran it at 7:21, and it brought me some ideas. But the thing earlier I said, right, so this is only if your laptop is switched on, it's running in your local file. So that is the one, point. But yeah, it will create an artifact, and also you give the instruction, but you can ask Claude to write the instructions, so you don't have to, and then you can understand how this works and whether the research output is good. If not, you can go back and change the instructions. But the third one, which I said, which is run routines, which is what it will run it in the cloud. So we talked about slash loop, which will run it in the session in the terminal, and then we have scheduled tasks, which is in the desktop, and then we have routines. Routines are the ones that will run it in the cloud. So you can always create a routine, and that's one of the main difference. But routine has more powerful ways to call this particular routine, and then via an API, and because it exposes the endpoint, and you can call this, trigger the routine, and it run the routines, and it will come back with some results, which you can take it to another platform wherever you have your build, or you want to connect to any other platform, right? So it doesn't matter. So you can see that local or cloud. Right now I don't have anything in the local. So what you have to do is you have to give your name and what's the routine that you're going to create, and maybe something about the description, and then more instruction about how it should work, and then the scheduling, right? How you want to schedule, like what's the time. So that's how you build a routine. But like I said, it's if it is a local, then it's going to run only when the computer is awake and online. But you are going to have the capability, it has this capability to run it in the cloud. So that's what it's making it powerful. So it's better to give some kind of an auto, or because if it's stuck somewhere and it's not going to be able to do it, right? So it has to wait for your permissions. So it's good to go with auto, but also you have to think about what kind of things that you have mentioned in the instructions, which has to be careful as well. Yes, I can go and show you some. I created this routine today, and then it was, I think everyone knows this film, right? The Odyssey, which is a good movie from Christopher Nolan, and I want to see this, but it's just it's limited number of IMAX shows, and I said, okay, I want to go and check the shows whenever they release a slot. Like I was checking it multiple sources, and what's happening is it's not, I would say, like it's not they're not releasing the shows every for a week. They're releasing every 2 days or every 3 days. So whenever it's released, so it's kind of hard to book a ticket, because it's been everyone is looking for it. So that's why I try to run this routine. So it's going to run, and it's going to run in the cloud, and so it's going to check different places like district and couple of other book my show apps, which is typically we use it to book the movie tickets, and every 6 hours, that's the plan. But I could run it like every 4 hours, 3 hours as well, just to give me some okay, whenever this is open for this particular date, I can go and book it as soon as possible, so that I get the best seats. So it's just a simple way, but but you could do for many other things, even for the projects you can do. And like whenever when someone is pushing it, someone is pushing anything to the code, to the GitHub, and if you're a team, then you can understand what changes it has been done. So that you can do it as well. And then you have an option to check the calendar, what it is I have scheduled every 6 hours. So that's why this will be scheduled for a week. And yeah, so those are 3 different ways of scheduling something. And let me go back and tell you what this is about. So like I said, routines, desktop, schedule task, and slash loop. So you can see that it runs on Anthropic cloud, and schedule task, or like your machine, when your laptop is open, it's going to run it. And slash loop, which is your machine, which is just like a terminal. And whether it needs your machine on, no, but it's yes. Needs open session, no, but here it has to be, when you're running slash loop, the session has to be on, right? So things like that, survives, restarts, yes, no, and local file access, no, because it's running in the cloud. But the other ones, yes, because they are running it in your desktop. Permission prompts, okay, this is okay. And minimal interval, so when you're doing it, those 2 activities cloud, it has to be minimum interval of 1 hour, and but the other ones you have to be like 1 hour, 1 minute. And other differences are it runs autonomously, and then there is a migration note as well. So those are the 3 different ways of running loops in Claude, and also in the Claude Code. Those are mostly, yes, scheduled jobs. So next we have this website and deployment. So we talked about, right now we just cloned a website, which is Bhaskaran builds, and we have to I want to show you like how we have to deploy to GitHub, and then from to push it to GitHub, which is the place where we store the code, and then from GitHub to the Vercel, where we can deploy it, and then see the website in a different UI. URL, so you know how to host it as well. So that's what we're going to do, websites and deployment. So how this is going to work. So you have Claude Code, which is the place where there is AI development and coding environment, and then there is GitHub, which is source control and collaboration. What you do is you work in a project from Claude Code, and then you do the Git push. When you do that, it will go to the GitHub. It will go to your GitHub repository, which is this, and it will create a project repository here, and then it will be stored here. So nothing complex here. It's just a way. Let's say I'm opening this particular project, which is Content Tools here, which is my project, and you can see all the coding, the files that is available, so you can do that. So that's what it is. And once you go to the GitHub, so now you all the code is situated in GitHub, and everyone can collaborate together on this particular project, and which is what I would say like source control and collaboration. The reason why we use GitHub a lot is we have one branch, which is main branch, and then we have sub branches, child branches. We can't work in the main branch because you push it to the live, and then users will be using it, and any changes that you're making in the code, you don't want to go and do it, right? You work in the sub branch, and then once you're done with the future change, then you push it to the main branch, which is good, which is the best practices of building any application. So to do that, and collaboration wise, it's better to use GitHub. So once you have the GitHub, then you deploy to connect to Vercel to deploy it, which is just because it is in GitHub, you're not getting any URL to go and hit it up, right? So baskinbuilds.com. So how do I go that? So there should be a link, and then you click that, and then it will go to that particular page. So you have to host it somewhere. That's why we use Vercel, serverless platform and deployment, and then it goes to the live site, which is whenever you push it to the main version in GitHub, it will automatically deploy to Vercel once it's been connected. So what we're going to do is, since we have the we just cloned the repo, which is Bhaskar and Build's website, I want to first just test it in local. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to the Claude Code, and I'm going to create that going to the particular session, and I'm not going to commit anything. I'm just going to say, hey, I want to test this repo in the local. Just give me the link. So it opens the server port and allow me. Okay, it opened that port, like, which is the local host 8000, and that's what and it's going to open in the app. Just open beside the chat. You can do that, or open from the browser. I prefer to do it from the browser. Where should this link open? I'm going to click this, and now I got the website, right? But it's in the local host. It's not hosted anywhere. It's just in my laptop, and I want this to be hosted somewhere else. So check this out as well, baskinbuilds.com, and why not? So let me go back, and first I want this to be pushed to the GitHub. Hey, can you create a new repo in GitHub for this particular project? And I want to push this to GitHub, and then from there I want to push it to connect to the Vercel. So I will take care of the Vercel part. I'll just push it to the GitHub and create a new repository for this. So right now we have all the project here in Claude Code, right? And now I want to push it to GitHub, and it's asking me whether I want to create a repo as a private or public. See, the difference is that if it is a public, anyone can come and visit the Bhaskar and Builds. Of course, they can have access to whenever they go to my repo, whenever they go to my organization, which is Bhaskar at close feature Bhaskaran at github/.com/ at Bhaskaran, right? At Bhaskaran 1073. Yeah. So whenever they go and visit my profile, they should be able to the projects that are like public, they should be able to see it. So that's why I always put this as private, so it's only for us, and put it as private repo, and then name the repo whatever you want. But we'll go with the BB test, which is what we did. I'm going to put it as BB test, and it should create a repo in my GitHub right now. Let's see once it's done. Okay, private repo BB test, committed pending work first. Okay, it's going to push all this to the GitHub. Right now everything is in local, so it's asking me allow Claude to run commit pending changes. Yes, I'm going to commit this, and you can see that it's going to git remote, rename the origin, and then it's going to create the BB test, and it's going to be private. So that's what it is. You don't have to understand everything, but when you read it, you will get to understand what this is exactly doing it. Okay, creating the private repo in my GitHub, which is connected, then it pushing this code to the GitHub repo. So running a command, I can show you. Okay, allow Claude to run verify, push. Okay, allow once. I can do these kind of things. I can do allow all the time, and then okay, it created the repo. Wonderful, and it's private, default main branch, and origin BB test. So I'm going to open this repo. Let's open it in my browser. It just created the whole repo, and which is good. It's a private repo, and it is in my right now in my GitHub. It was until now it was in my local desktop file. This is right now in in GitHub, and from here I can be able to deploy to Vercel, which is what you have seen, right? So far our Claude, whatever we have done, which is in Claude Code, and now we push to git push and then push to GitHub, and from here I want to connect to Vercel so that I can, whenever I made changes from Claude Code to push to GitHub, it will automatically push to Vercel and the live users would be able to see it. So let me bring the Vercel, and Vercel, you go to vercel.com, or you can, there are so many providers, right? Railway.com, Render, and but I prefer Vercel and Railway, which is what I'm using it most of the time. So I have a couple of other projects that I have hosted it, and go to the add new and create a new project. So but whenever you're creating a new account in vercel.com, you always have this option to connect your GitHub, which is the GitHub repository, so you can deploy any project from GitHub to Vercel directly. So that's the primary reason behind that. But in my Vercel, I have already connected my GitHub project. So I'm going to put project, and I want to connect this. See, right now I have connected 3 projects, but I want to see the project that we want to connect is BB test, which is not here. So we need to figure out, this is missing Git repository, so I need to bring that repo to, of course, to Vercel so that I can deploy it. I'm going to click, I need to give that access. I'm going to give that select repository, because right now only 3 repositories we have given access to Vercel, but I want to see, okay, there is BB test, which is what I want. I'm going to click BB test and save. Okay, so I'm going to refresh this. Okay, BB test, now it came, and I'm going to import this particular project, let's say, so that I can create. So when I'm going to import, this is the project name is BB test. Whether I have any environmental variables, not, because it's just a website, and if it is a web application, you will have some environmental variables, which is basically any secret keys or the project IDs of the Superbase database, and those will become under environmental variables. But right now it's just a website, so we don't have anything. I'm going to just, I think this is okay, good. I'm going to deploy it, and let's wait for it. Okay, so it's good, right? So you just deployed, congratulations, you just deployed a new project to Bhaskar and close feature projects. I want to continue to the dashboard and see what it does. So it just, right now, until now, you can see that it was localhost and I don't have any URL. So if I want to share it to anyone, I can't be able to share it, and that's why we have Vercel to host it. You can always see this BB test osher.vercel.app. Right now this app is finally, this website is finally ready and it's hosted. So if I want to host it really in bhaskarandbuilds.com, I can go back, I can just go back and of course connect my domain, and I can add existing domain or buy a domain and to bhaskarandbuilds.com. But right now I'm not going to connect because it's already live, and I have lived it from railway.com, which is another platform provider. So it doesn't make sense for me to do it. But that's it, right? So you created something in Claude Code and you push it to GitHub, and then now it's live in Vercel. So that's how you bring any project to live, from coding to the GitHub, where the source control and collaboration, and then to the last step, which is Vercel auto deployment. So right now, whenever you push anything to from Claude Code to main, whenever you're pushing anything to this particular repo, this will be automatically pushed to the Vercel. So that's a great part about it. So right now I just refreshed, you can see that this link has been created and from Vercel, right? Yeah. So that's mostly about this deployment and how you create a project from Claude Code and then push it to GitHub and then host it in Vercel or any other platform like railwayrender.com. Okay, perfect. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this. So I hope this is clear, and let's go back to your main place, which is website deployment or app, I would say websites or app deployment. Okay, so the next one, it's super important, security best practices, because we know that right now you have given a lot of permissions to the agents and you restrict some things, certain things, but in this world security is super important. And considering that everyone can build a project using Claude Code or Codex or any other platform, but security is the part that's going to play a critical role, because you should have a basic understanding of how security works, right? What are the things that you should be careful and consider about when you're shipping a real project to the users. If you're doing it something for you, side project, that's fine, mostly no one cares, but still you should not expose certain things, so that has to be careful about. So let's go back, and we have certain best practices that I want to discuss with you. So which is start with safe defaults. Always, like I said, permission wise, start with manual or accept edits in the mode. Don't go straight to the auto, which is not good. So the reason. And also bypass permissions whenever you have to use sandbox. box and separate virtual environment, not directly in the desktop, so which is dangerous as well. And protect secrets, never paste API keys, any API key that you're going to get from for OpenAI or Claude or Subagents or any API key that you're going to bring, and don't paste it in the prompts, which is bad practice. And always keep secrets in .env file, which is environmental file. So I'm going to show you, but I'm not going to show what I have it in the environmental file. I'm just going to open the files, and you can see okay, I can just search it, env.local, which is the place where we put all the secrets and the important things that we need for the project, and we will refer it in many places. So that's why it's env.local, which means it's going to stay in my laptop only. And then whenever I'm going to host it in Vercel or any other platform hosting provider, I'm going to put those keys, the secret keys, there. So until then it should not be transferred via any place, so which is important. Yeah, so always ask Claude to use environmental variables, not hard-coded keys. So which is ask it to not use hard-coded API keys or any keys anywhere in the project, anywhere in the code, but it will do it automatically. So if you find it things, or you can put it in of course in the CLAUDE.md file, certain thing. And of course read it and review. It's hard to understand, of course, if you're a beginner, but try to understand what it is doing. And so that's why follow the commands, which is important as well. And if you don't understand, the typical thing is if you don't understand the change, ask Claude about, okay, how did you do it, what did you do it, what did you do, and what changes that you have done to the file, and let me explain in a simplified way. So, and be careful with certain destructive commands that I said. Whenever you find those commands like migration, delete, deploy certain commands, so always should be careful. So you can put it in the permission that we discussed in the settings.local.json, and then put there, and okay, these are the things that it should not be allowed whenever you are going to try to execute it. So you just have to be careful, right? So the best practice that you should follow. And yeah, also let Claude explain risky commands before running them. Okay, whenever it says it's risky, but ask it to explain what you're running and then what's the consequence of it. And keep the project boundary clear, that have a separate folder and in the Claude code. And then whenever it's asking to get the full directory access, which is every file in the documents or like anywhere in your local, don't give it. Try to keep it only to that particular project level, so it's not going to destroy, or like it's not going to remove anything that is in the other project file. So keep that more secure. And for teams and companies, I think this is proper, so it's not, we don't have to cover much. Yeah, so which I always state, like plugin MCPs and custom commands, always install only the tools you trust. And so that's why I said use that skill inspector for you to trust that particular skill that you're going to install, so that you only install the low risky skills. And same for the MCPs and other plugins as well. Plugins, do it from Anthropic officials plugin marketplace, and install only the one that is good and that has more number of stars, and many people are recommending it. Yeah, so the last one which is plugins or the commands to use. So what happened was Claude recently they released this plugin, which is Claude security plugin, which is a super powerful plugin. And even before that, they had a couple other commands, which is like security review and Claude, a couple other commands, but it's not advanced as Claude security. I'm going to talk to you about this. I'm going to open this particular thing, so which is Claude security, and I want to bring it to you here in the bottom. So what happening is Claude security, there is so many things, like it's Claude security, which is on demand and single pass. Like it just works on your what it is in the current branch, and then it checks the simple security check. But then you have Claude security plugin, which is you need to install it, and it's not like a command, so on demand, and it deep scan, it goes and runs the entire repo. So that's what it makes it more powerful. Okay, so there are other things, but I would say like code review, but these are the two things that I use regularly, which is on the Claude /security. And let's run it, and I'm going to tell you how to run this. So this way, and I'm going to escape. So the simple command, which is /security review. Once you've done that, it's going to do it. So it's going to check the changes that we have done in the current branch, and it checks it in a simplified way. So it's not checking the entire repo. So it goes and run it, and you can see that any changes that we do, so it can see it is reading the file that we have created much recently, which is the hook. It does the security reviews. You see that findings none at high or medium confidence. So not much of a thing that we have done done it, because right, so we didn't do work on much this current session, or I would say in the current branch, so that's why it's not bringing much. But there is this another thing called like I said, security plugin. So I have installed it, but if you are going to install, you need to, of course, you need to download, and what you have to do is, first you need to install to the Claude plugin marketplace. So you need to run this, and once you run it, you will be able to install it. So how do you check this? This is the plugin, so you know how to check the plugins, and you click plugins, and you can see the marketplace. So if you want to add it, it will be added in the marketplace, and then you can check it from the discover or the installed ones, which is Claude Security. You see that Claude Security has been installed. So what you have to do is you just run this, and then it will install in your plugin marketplace, and then you can just use it, right? So I'm going to run it just for you to show how this works. I'm going to use Claude Security. There is this option of pick a job, scan the code base, hold repository or scope part of it, right? So I'm going to run this, not the scan. Okay, so that's not what I want to run. I prefer to run this security, Claude Security, and this is what I want to run. I would say, yeah, Claude Security. And I'm going to run this. So you see that, once I started running it, you can easily understand that, it opened this particular plugin, and it's asked me to, what you do like to do, like, scan the full code base, which is recommended, but I did it for multiple for many of our projects, but I'm not going to recommend why. I will tell you why. But then also you can always do the, okay, just give me some second. So, or you can do some scan changes specifically in the current branch, so not everything in your whole code base, which is, if it is a big, it's going to take so much of a time, and suggest patches as well. Whenever if you find some vulnerabilities, it will suggest some patches. So what it does, like, scan the whole code base. When I run it, it will ask you, it's going to run multiple agents. Like, for me, it ran like 250 agents to run the whole database and whole code base to bring the vulnerabilities, like at the low level, medium level, and high level security vulnerabilities that is available. So I ran it whenever I work with client projects, or went to my own project that I'm going to push it to live. So I need to understand. So it will take a lot of credits, which I say like tokens. But when you are in the max plan, I think it makes sense. But if you're in a pro plan, I suggest not to do it. But if you can try it out as well. So that is what it is. But once it ran, I'm going to show you what it did. Yeah, you can see that, right? It created a security report, and this is, I ran it like I think in July 23. So I ran it at that time, and it created those other files as well, tracker. Yeah, so .html file it will create. So it just created that. I'm going to open in integrated browser. So this is what it came, what is high, what is medium, and what is low, which is good, right? So I couldn't find those vulnerabilities typically, but it ran like so many agents and understand, and it created the patches what it should do to fix those mistakes as well. So those are all great points, and that's why if you have good credits, go and run this Claude Security at the full scope level before you are pushing to live your project, so that your users can, it's safe, right? It's safe, and you will be thankful to that. So that's mostly on the security part of it, and I hope you had a good understanding on what you should do, right? So that is mostly on. Okay, the final part that I want to discuss, which is tokens, token optimization. Tokens are really that's what it's cost, like everything money about the LLMs and using Codex or Claude Code or or any other coding agents. Finally it comes to the tokens. Session limits, typically, like, we don't know how this works with the session limits, but you can always check it out, this usage, right? So how much of a usage that you have used in the usage limits, like, and then also about 5-hour limits or more on, I would say, like, right? So it's on the weekly limit as well. So all this comes to the tokens. If you're using too much of a token, then it doesn't make more sense. So we just have to follow the best practices in how we can reduce the usage of tokens. Okay, the first thing that I want to bring, when we talk about tokens, I want to bring you this Claude pricing, how they typically price. Okay, when I'm talking about of course the tokens, input and the output tokens, I would like to bring the Claude API pricing, so which is important, right? So you need to understand how Claude is pricing the tokens, and you can always see the best models out there, which is like Claude Fable 5 or Mythos 5 and Opus 5. They also charge based on the input tokens, the number of tokens that is going inside to the agent, and the number of tokens that is coming out, which is output tokens. When I say coming out, which means it's going to make some changes in the code, or it's going going to output as a text, and all those are output tokens. So typically, like how they charge is, input tokens are like, $10 if you see out for a million tokens for Claude Fable 5, and the outputs are typically 5x, like, $50 for a million tokens. And this is the same with almost all the models for Claude, and also the same with most of the LLMs, most of the coding agents out there, right? So it just, so you can understand that, you have to control both, like input and also the output, but primarily output, which is 5x. But also the problem with input is, you just have a big context. If you're in a session, you just talk to it many messages, and then it goes out, in a much faster way. So you have to be careful. So when you want to optimize, you have to optimize both input and also the output tokens. So coming back here, okay, how do we optimize it, right? So there are a couple other plugins and the tools which I would say, like, we will go and discuss about. Okay, the first tool that I want to discuss, which is Headroom. So you can use the GitHub, and which is headroomlabs.ai, and then, Headroom. I'm going to go quick on this because I have already put some YouTube video regarding only on token optimization. You can go and check it out, but I will cover, much simplified way here. So you have this, you just go and install. So what this Headroom does, it's just a layer that sits between you and the agent. So anything that goes to the agent, it compresses so that, the agent will receive a minimal compressed way of information to, to do certain things. So in this way, you just reduce the number of input tokens that goes to that. But does it mean it reduces performance? Not much, or like anything, because it's been tested, and many people are using it. So you can just install, like, copy this and install this, and based on that also you will have an option to get the dashboard, and you can also check, the token usage. See, everything this is, anything that I have talked in the terminal. So whatever that I have talked here, or like, I'm going to close this, and whatever anything that I have talked here, everything is, the input tokens. All the messages, they are all input tokens, and whatever the Claude has written to back to me, they are all output tokens. It can be written in text, or it can be in the code. So that's our next focus. Okay, so the next one that I want to discuss, which is Ponytail. It's specifically focused on the output tokens, and you can see that this is but specifically on the code. What Ponytail does, it's just like a senior engineer who understand what we don't have to write 100 lines. We can simplify it in maybe 50 lines. So that's kind of an engineer, and if the Claude is writing just 50 lines, which means we are saving the output tokens cost, right? We can improve the efficiency of the code and also save the cost. So that's what Ponytail focus on. And K-Man, the third one, which is also, focusing on the output tokens, but focusing on the text of the output tokens. So unlike Ponytail focus only on the code of the output tokens, but K-Man focus on the text, what is coming out from the Claude, it will be focusing on. And you can see that, let's say there are so many things that it's been written by, probably by Claude, which is also costing us money because it's output tokens. And if it is a K-Man, what it does, it will simplify the information, and that's what K-Man does. Install all this. I have installed all this to reduce the token usage. And CodeBurn, which is like, a player that tracks, helping us to track everything, like, everything Claude Code. Even if you're using Hermes agent or any other different agent across your desktop app, it will bring all the tokens there, and you can go by project level or repository level, or agent level and session level. You can go and understand where you are using more tokens. So if you can't measure it, how do you manage it? So that's what CodeBurn helps you to do that. And finally, of course, in every session there is this option called /compact, which is a default way. So whenever you are going in a big session, it's good to use a command called /compact, which will just compact your session. And when you are like a token usage of like 200k 300k out of 1 million context, you can always use /compact. So what it does, it just compact your input messages, everything, so that it will send you only the reduced amount of tokens to the agent. So that's what it does. So that's mostly it, and on how you can optimize the tokens. But there is a video that I have done, you can go and check it out. That would be best way to go and understand the token optimization. So that's great way to end this particular masterclass, Claude Code Masterclass. We have learned so many things. I hope you have learned so many things. And from introduction about Claude Code, and then we talked about, of course, how you can install it. And specifically, we talked about harness code engineering, which is like what makes the harness more powerful. The ability to give the skills, MCPs, plugins, and a Claude.md file, which is memory, plus the subagents and the hooks as well. And then we discussed about how to build a project and push it to Git, and then also GitHub, and then from there how to deploy it in Vercel. And then we talked about security best practices, how you can, once you're done with the project, what things that you should do to do the security review, And finally, we talked about the token optimization. So I hope you learned so many things. Hope it's a good masterclass for you at the time that you have spent. If you like the content, please like this and share it with some of your friends and subscribe to our channel so that we could come back with more masterclasses. So yeah, that's it. Until then, eat, sleep, build, and repeat. Ciao.